room for our business meeting. It's a great way to hear about what's going on with HEDW. It's a creative grassroots organization, so it's nice to be connected to how the group is running, and so we encourage everyone to stay after lunch and participate in the business meeting. That's all I've got. It's all yours.
Thank you, Sherry. I think she just hijacked a little bit HEDW marketing in there. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing? Good, very good. I think this is a difficult presentation spot. It's the second spot of the morning. The people who got up later come in. The people who were here from the very beginning, they're just waking up. So I hope you guys are going to stay with me. I'm very happy to be here. It is my first time participating and presenting. Can everybody hear me? I know this is a microphone and I have something for the recording. I have an 18-year-old son who's a thespian, theater engaged, and my concept for projecting to him over the last couple of years was just yelling, but it's very focused in a short space. It's not over a big room like that. I'm very to be here, and I thank HEDW for allowing me to speak and to present. I have colleagues who have been here, and the University of North Texas had presentations here actually as far back as 2004 or 2005. So it's really great. Before I start with introducing myself and starting with the presentation, I would like to ask a couple of interactive questions, and I encourage being interactive. I don't have a wonderful polling tool. I'm just preferring the old-fashioned interaction. So who here in the room has a very good understanding of what big data is? I know it's a trick question. I do realize that. So I saw a few hands. That's very good. Who understands what agile is? This is so awesome that I don't have to explain it. I think agile is a great philosophy and a great concept, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. I wanted to do a group exercise, but because everybody understands it and knows it already, I don't have to do that, so that's fine. So I'm Jürgen Stegmaier. I'm born in Germany. I live here in this beautiful country since about 20 years, married to a beautiful American wife. And I work for the University of North Texas system. Everything is better with system at the end of it. The university itself, UNT, is one of the largest universities in the North Texas region. All the details about how many students we have and how many degrees we award, you can look it up on our website, www.unt.edu. It's all publicly available. I am here to talk in the beginning a little bit more about UNT system and especially the IT shared services division. We are providing shared services for, it doesn't work, that's nice. Technical difficulties. Oh, very good, all right. So we support all of the employees and students of 3 beautiful campuses and UNT system itself. UNT system is a shared services model. We started, I want to say, with the beginnings of a system about 10, 12 years ago, but with IT shared services from a shared services model just a couple of years ago. I think we are in our 4th or 5th year of that. And we currently have 219 employees. We provide the IT support for students, faculty, and staff at all campuses and locations. We have 3 beautiful campuses. The main one is in Denton, which is a small college town in North Texas, about 30 miles away from Dallas. The second campus is in Dallas itself. It's called UNT Dallas. And then we have a health science center location, UNT HSC, in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is also a beautiful location and campus. So we have many varied technological solutions and support architectures. as well as we're the same shared services model like HR and business service center, which takes care of things like purchasing and travel. It's a pain every once in a while to work with it, but it's good for you. It's shared service, and it really does what it's supposed to. It saves a lot of money. So we have a slew of strategic projects, and at the moment what we're working on as a shop is, I put that in no particular order, but I put mine on the top. The data warehousing program, a mobile student initiative. We rolled out our first mobile platform for students. We're working on a big upgrade. We're a PeopleSoft shop, so we're working on a big upgrade there. We instantiate and work on rolling out enterprise architecture, a student virtual desktop initiative, and an ITIL IT operational management implementation, which will give us more insights into key performance indicators and into measurements about our IT business as it relates to the university itself. So, as always, everything has a history, and data warehousing has a history at UNT. We are currently in our third major project around data warehousing. The first iteration was in about 2004, 2005, and we started with an ODS layer out of the PeopleSoft architecture, and it was Cognos bound, and I think the term RDS or ODS was a somewhat Cognos-centric technology and term. And after a couple of years, we started an implementation of Blackboard Analytics, which is a SQL Server-centric solution. And both of those solutions and architectures and projects had a couple of shortcomings. Number one, they were not analytics-centric. And number two, they did not fully fulfill the information needs of our highest decision makers or the operational level. So it was about May 2015, a little bit before that, that the leadership of the university and the system came up with a list of strategic projects, and one of those strategic projects and initiatives was a new data warehousing initiative, which is going to be bound to look forward in architecture and in use and in scalability. So, what is it, you ask? A lot of people have asked it too, and over the last couple of years we got a little bit of traction in either communication from the university or in local publications or in publications from our CIO. And just recently, one of our partners in the project is at Unity, and we did a press release with them. Again, you guys know all about big data, right? Dilbert, there's a really good website, and of course Dilbert is a source for many good ideas about what we're doing with IT, but he hits it on the head since a couple of years around big data, and this is just one of them. So everybody thinks big data is the catch-all and end-all and solution to everything, right? And actually, what it appears like on is anybody aware of a concept called the Gartner hype cycle? So yeah, exactly. The fun thing is that big data actually has fallen off that Gartner hype cycle. And how one professor has explained that, he mentioned that either means that people have implemented it and productionalized it and make good progress and tracking with it, or they are so tired and innovated with it and it doesn't show up anymore. So you can take either pick. I believe from looking at the industry that big data technology and big data related technologies have found their way in the industry. And while we are still at a young technology curve for that, Hadoop in itself at its center is 10 years old. The major companies that package Hadoop, Cloudera and Hortonworks, are 4 and 5 years old. So keep that in mind when you look at things like Banner and Oracle. And then you look at those newer things. There's still some growing pains, I want to say, over the next couple of years. So we started with a strategic project or a strategic committee, which was identifying the roadmap for the program, and also did the requirements definition and the solution analysis and technical architecture planning. The charter definition is really what we try to live by, and that is something we're trying to guide ourselves in the program. So we have the program, which in itself at the moment is geared to be about 3 years. We are barely starting with that. There are sub-projects within the program. The technical implementation project is one of them. So this will be one of our major success criteria, whether we can meet that goal to fulfill those unfulfilled information needs. It's fun to be in a strategic program and in a strategic committee. For me, that was a first-time experience, which is a little bit different from a project. It's not as well defined. It's strategic. Requirements analysis is a little bit different. And what the university did here was there was an ethnographic study done of like 18 to 20 don't nail me on the number of people, but a substantial number of people, of high-level decision makers of the landscape, and there were interviews, and there was a collaboration with faculty, with an ethnographic professor, and they provided us an overview and an analysis in the end with a beautiful presented story and a paper. And it was also a research project, so that was very well done. And then out of that, we had finally a solution. It took, the process of the strategic committee took about a year, a little bit less than a year. Some of my colleagues here, partners in the project, they actually went and did visits of institutions all around the country to interview people there, and then we came up with a technological architecture and solution which got adapted by the committee, and that was practically the end of the committee, and now we could go forward with implementation. Hello? I have to be in the right window. So the technical solution was to use a big data platform due to a number of reasons. One was affordability. The other one was looking forward towards a future-oriented architecture, and to be able to deal in the future with all sorts of data coming in. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but this is a scalable platform. We have somewhat of a cloud implementation. It's just on-premise. It's not yet as mature as AWS or Azure or something like that. We're nowhere in that realm. But we try to have the same principles and the same architecture components as those solutions. So we started out with selecting Cloudera as an implementation provider of the Hadoop implementation. And for analytical software and data management software, we're using SAS. And as a storage platform, we're using Isilon, which is a NAS storage platform from EMC. And that's a non-traditional Hadoop implementation, because Hadoop, if you remember, many, many nodes, local storage on these nodes, scalable. We have converged infrastructure for compute and storage, and we had Isilon, so our CIO was like, why don't we use Isilon? So we will talk about that a little bit more. That is, I want to say it's a present that keeps on giving, that non-traditional implementation. Why Hadoop? Again, we've had relational databases in-house, but we wanted to deal with unstructured data going forward. So there were other alternatives, but Hadoop is one of the biggest implementation for big data in that realm. We got counseled by people like EMC, like Cloudera, like Hortonworks. And it's a scalable platform. And if you think about one way how big data platforms and technology has found its way now into the mainstream, if you look, for example, at Microsoft, they had it behind their Azure platform for quite a while, but with the new MS SQL 2016 offering, they have big data technology implemented there. Oracle as well, since about last year. So all of that was not yet available, and by the way, the price point is slightly different. So, all right. So I'm here to talk about the technical part of the project, and while I'm getting more and more to the understanding that the labeling of things sometimes is helpful, sometimes it's not. So when we're saying we're taking care of the technical part and we have partners in the project, they take care of the functional and the development and the business intelligence and analytics platform, those kind of boundaries are shifting somewhat. And that's what I want to try and bring about. Many people perceive IT as a hindrance, right? Especially IR. My wife is a senior IR person at Texas Woman University, also located in Denton. She has horror stories about dealing with IT and how difficult it is to get data and how terrible the problems with security are. And so I am trying to mitigate those issues a little bit, and I am under the mindset that we are all having as a foremost goal the betterment of our student outcomes and of our institution. So it doesn't matter whether I say I'm technical or I'm a data modeler or I'm doing functional things. The outcomes all need to be the same. So we all need to be pulling towards that same goal. So here's a perspective from the technical team. So here's how we see ourselves, right? I have to say I am so proud of my technical team over the last 6 to 8 months. They have done a tremendous job. It was difficult to implement this new technology. They're all, for the most part, you'll see they're traditional DBAs. And putting in a big data platform is something different. And we've had vendor interactions with different sequencing and different quality. So I congratulate my team and I praise them up to the heaven, as well as my partners in the program. It is awesome, and I also believe that we are somewhat some forefront and forerunners in that sense that we're instantiating a big data platform on premise, somewhat with cloud principles, and we don't outsource. We don't use Azure or AWS or something like that. So this is how we see ourselves, and then of course there's maybe the other reality, right? How other people see us. But here's of course what it really is. It's this here, okay? I stand to that. So what was the technical project team made up of? It's first and foremost, our sponsor is our Chief Technology Officer. Her name is Kendra Ketchum. I love her dearly. She has been such a great sponsor of the program and thinks about these important things and the cooperation aspect between the different functions every day, and it's just great. So we had a project manager, a technical lead, that's me on this part, an enterprise architect, quality assurance, 3 DBAs, 1 SaaS system administrator, a server administrator, and a storage administrator. They're not dedicated to the program. And in fact, our project manager, for example, he leads like 3 or 4 major programs, bless his heart. He's having a real tough time, but he's doing wonderful. So here's a little bit of the technical program timeline. Like I said, we started with the technical implementation in September 2016. And we were supposed to be done with the first part of technical implementation, ending in a milestone of opening up the system for our functional partners around beginning of the year, but it took a little bit longer. Couple of things we talk about later. But so we had our milestone of opening up the development environment. It is exciting because the development environment means now people come and actually do work in it. So that means we're discovering all sorts of issues, we're discovering the business processes, and we are well underway of finding out what we need to do to go forward and prepare our road for production, which I call technical production. The functional part has a different, somewhat longer timeline, but basically the goal is to have a fully supportable, technical, stable, manageable, and performant production platform beginning of December this year. So what that means is we're going to be opening up production. We have pre-production, we have UAT, we have performance testing. We were planning on our first upgrade cycle. Our upgrade cycle is a yearly deal. And we haven't done an upgrade cycle yet, but due to budgeting things and items, we're going to move it out into next year. All right. So here is technical implementation phase 2. Phase 1 is already gone, so I didn't put in there. But phase 1 was basically the implementation and installation of all the technical components and a unit test of our implementation partners and making sure that the first basic things are working. And now the actual work and learning and figuring out the system starts. So this is a more detailed timeline and task list of all the things, all the fun things we get to do between basically now and end of the year. And it scares me a little bit because it's unbelievable how fast time goes forward. So, but that's what we're doing right now. Right now we're helping our partners prepare for a very important presentation to the leadership of UNT, which is the first exposure to that level. So as you all know, that needs to go well, and we're looking forward to that. And then we're working on successively getting closer and closer to a stable production environment. All right, so big data, new tools, right? I'd like to share a few thoughts about that. At the beginning of my career, about 28 years ago, I'm from Germany. I started working for a company there. It was AT&T, GIS at that point in time, Global Information Systems. Behind that was NCR, and I started consulting for data warehousing projects. And then I did a couple of other things, and now I'm here again after the time frame talking about data warehousing. So I was reminiscing this morning, does it mean, did I make a full circle? Does it mean, is it the end, or what's coming after that? I don't know. But when I first started looking into big data about 1.5 to 2 years ago, what struck me is the variety and the multitude of tools that come with that environment, right? And it's not all homogeneous. It's not a nice solution. You can, for every function in that universe, you have about 10 tools that can do the thing. And so I was thinking about, well, how are we going to do that? How am I going to socialize my team with it? How are we going to grow with that? And I also started thinking about, are those really new tools? Are those really entirely new architectures and entirely new processes behind it? And I found out it's not necessarily the case. So everybody who sits in the room and has a little bit longer experience in the business is aware of things like streamlining and optimizing parallelisms and coding and treating data in a different way and having scale up and scale out issues and all of those things. So I went to a little workshop just a couple of weeks ago at our library, which is great. I'm also in a PhD program for information science, so I get to go and be a student, which is awesome because I can sometimes talk from the student's perspective, which is great. And I went there, and at the library they had a workshop about old lettering and typesetting and bookbinding. So I just took pictures and I looked at all those tools. I was like, oh yeah, I don't, new tools I get to buy and play with, right? And then I thought, well, yeah, 30 years ago I was in my school newspaper and we did desktop publishing, right? We did cut and paste, and this is what we were using. So my point here is some of those tools and processes look very new and shiny and intimidating, or in this case, old and shiny. But it's not necessarily like that, and this is how I have positioned it with my team. So, all right. So let's take a look. I call our approach a traditional data warehousing approach on a big data platform. The reason why I'm calling it this way is because in our phased approach, we are starting with traditional data sources. So our data sources are on-premise databases, mostly out of PeopleSoft databases, Oracle, and some information out of our legacy data warehouse and out of our Blackboard Analytics data warehouse. So this is all structured data, tables. From a big data perspective, nothing exciting there, right? And it's just our first phase, and hopefully we get to go and work with much more interesting things and concepts going forward. But this is what we start out with. This is our first approach here. And from our data ingestion layer, we started using Scoop from Apache, from Hadoop. And that was working okay, but we ran into some issues, and we have a bulk data replication tool from Attunity now. It's Attunity Replicate. And from a data integration perspective, we're using SAS tools, specifically the Data Integration Studio from SAS. They also have a component, Hadoop Data Loader, which we ran into some problems technically, and we're hoping to have online in a couple of weeks. But this is the main, the Data Integration Studio is the main ETL type tool that we're using in this context. And then we have, again, we're using Isilon from EMC for storage. We're using a converged platform for compute. So this is from EMC. and it's based on vBlock appliances. So which is nice because I can just go to my boss, who's the director of infrastructure, and I can just ask for things, right? For things being new servers and more memory and all those kind of things. But there are still processes in the background which have to do with budgeting and capacity, and that's what the promise is. So that's our scale out model, a little bit like AWS. So if I need to scale out, it's not dynamic at the moment, but if I need some more, I can tap into that, and that's how we have positioned it from an IT budget and infrastructure budget over the next couple of years as well. And everything is virtual, and we just use VMware as virtualization layer. As our data lake, we are partnering with Hortonworks, one of the major distributors and packagers for an Hadoop implementation, and we're using their HDP platform, Hadoop data platform, and it's been working out great for us so far. Intricacies are in the combination of using Isilon with HDP, because Hadoop usually wants to have functionality related to data nodes and to HDFS in their layer. And with using Isilon, a lot of that functionality is encapsulated into that storage layer. So that means we don't get measurements out of Hadoop for that. We have to go to Isilon and use a different tool, which means some processes that would usually run on Hadoop in a standard way are not running or run differently. And which also have given us some joyful interaction with the next higher up layer, which is our analytical layer. And we're using SAS visual analytics and visual statistics, as well as the Office Analytics plugin. We're also using Enterprise Guide for some base SAS capabilities. And as you have seen, some people think about data management and governance, obviously. I think there's only 350 presentations in this conference. And we're using and having started to use products from SAS for that. They have a product which is called BDN, Business Data Network, which is their main data dictionary tool. And another product which is called Data Flux, which deals with things like data exploration, quality assurance. So this is really powerful. And we have what I call contributors. Okay, so all the people that support or develop on the platform, they contribute. And then we have the people we actually do all of that for, and I call those consumers. Okay, these are the people that on the one hand hopefully will reap the power of analytics going forward, and also in a self-service fashion in the future, hopefully will be enabled to create their own dashboards to fulfill their own data requests. So one of the business outcomes, one of our business processes that we try to hope to achieve is that data requests can be fulfilled in a self-service fashion going forward in a high magnitude. So that is definitely one of the operational goals for that. All right. So the next layer here, the next few slides are a little bit more drilled down into each one of those layers. So I start with the analytical layer. We have a SAS server farm. It's not really a cluster in the IT traditional definition of cluster, but it's a bunch of nodes, and some nodes have different functionality, right? So we have a visual analytics layer, which has a head node and worker nodes behind it. And what we're having at the moment, we're having really a low footprint, which can grow. So these virtual machines, from their footprint, they're Memory is about 240, and vCPU are about, I think the biggest is 12. So it's really nothing big from a power perspective at the moment. But this is also most likely to grow. So this is our growth model here. We have one node which hosts all the web services, one for metadata, which I learned frequently more and more. If something happens to the metadata server you host, so protect it under all costs. We have one node only for mid-tier services, and then we have something that's called the chump server for all the consultants that have been doing implementations and installations from a remote perspective. They go through a chump server to get VPN connectivity and all that good stuff. So our entry points into visual analytics is basically still the more powerful PC client tools, which are Data Integration Studio and Data Management Studio. And then visual analytics, which is just a URL in a web browser. The same thing with BDN. And we have a mobile platform. SAS really renders extremely nicely for dashboards and reports on an iPad. So it's a beautiful thing. The next layer here is our data lake. And again, we don't have a lot of nodes yet. One of the sentiments in the beginning of the project was, oh, when you implement Hadoop, you need hundreds and hundreds of nodes, and it's going to be so terrible, and you have to manage so much. And we're not there yet. We have a handful of nodes, and we'll see what the growth model is going to be for that. Again, there's an edge node, processing nodes. There is something called Ambari. Hortonworks' main management tool is called Ambari, the main management GUI. And then we have master nodes, which also need to be protected in a special way. And Hadoop at the moment is really only accessed by my team, either through the Ambari management services in GUI or through anything relating to the data intake layer and into writing data into HDFS. And in the future, while we currently posit that most of the access is going through the SAS layer, visual statistics is very nice. It's a nice GUI front end which encapsulates a lot of the functionality of SAS Enterprise Miner. So you get all of your most common modeling capabilities. You get regression, you get a decision tree, you get neural networks, all of that in a GUI form and fashion. But there might be a need sometime for data scientists to directly access data or to use, an RStudio or something like that. And that will be an entry point into the system on a lower level here then as well. All right. Let's talk about our data sources a little bit. We started out initially with traditional data sources, again, just table extracts. There was an exciting time at the beginning of the project where we thought we would be taking in entire databases. That thinking changed very fast. Our student-related PeopleSoft database has about 27,000 tables. So the question came up, why taking in 27,000 tables, right? Because the value proposition is, oh, you have a data lake now, you can take everything, right? And we just figure out later what we're going to do with it. No, we went a little bit more with the curated version, and I don't necessarily like the term reservoir, because I still like the term data lake. It's something organic, something beautiful, which can also change. But we went ahead and we made a more determined list of master tables that we're currently taking in. We have the capacity now more than ever to really take in much more than we want to. So we are setting ourselves up for that capacity, but we went away from that idea to really be able to take an entire system and just copy that. Technically, we would be enabled for doing that, but I got that idea out of a presentation from Ford at a big data conference in San Jose last year. And they have, of course, a completely different business model. So we're a little bit more detailed here. So what we're hoping now that we go into the second technical implementation phase, we saw a great presentation yesterday, which was talking about a data troll, and it was having a nice picture there showing a troll on the bridge as the mythical creature who hogs all data and lets nobody interact with it. I want to incorporate the positive aspects of that in a sense that I want to, and aggressively from a business perspective, drive forward the notion that we need to get as many data sources as possible into the data warehouse. To really start getting that 360-degree view and to really give data scientists the opportunity to start exploring, to use machine learning, to look at large data sets. So I'm a fervent prophet and apostle of that, which is okay for the technical level, but we have to keep in mind that we're working with our functional partners, and their timing looks a little bit different. So what happens is I have to be careful to go out in the landscape and say, oh, okay, give me your data. Because people get the idea as soon as the data is in the data warehouse, we get beautiful dashboards, we get a wonderful data mart, we have reports and all of that, and I have to temper that a little bit at the moment and just say, no, we're preparing for the next step, and I already want to have all of that data all lined up and streamlined and performant so that when that happens, we're going to be there already, and we don't deal with that next year or in 2 years. It's a little bit of a different approach. In addition, we're looking into taking in data sources which are in the cloud, which are off-premise, which are API-driven. We're going to be using a different tool for that, which is in this case called Mule from MuleSoft, or the other way around, which is an enterprise data hub and an enterprise service bus product, and which will give us a capacity to address any system that only exposes data with an API. So Salesforce, Blackbaud are a couple of those systems. So we're going to be able to basically attach to any API and connect that way and extract data that way. We will also look into social media aspects and into text processing and text analytics down the way, as well as hopefully some streaming, log processing, and IoT applications. But we are at the beginning of our journey, and I have to temper and pace myself because I get excited about those things, and my boss says, you got to slow down a little bit because A, the resource base isn't there yet, and B, we need to fulfill a couple of things in the program first before we can get into those levels. Yes, okay. I'm talking too much. I fully apologize. So I'm speeding up a little bit. We have the data ingest layer, different tools. Again, we started out with Scoop, which is only CLI, custom scripts. Had some problems with it. It works okay. It works well enough. But then we actually got the opportunity to buy a commercial product, Attunity, which does high-speed replication services for us with an enterprise capacity, and also gives us the capability of implementing CDC, change data capture, which is something that we don't have at the moment and which will allow us to do incremental updates and which will bring us to higher velocity and hopefully bring us to not fully real-time, but as close as real-time as we can get, as we can technically drive it and functionally drive it. And then phase 2, we're going to be talking about Mule going forward. There we go. All right. Fun other things in this environment. We still have to think about backup, but only now it's over 4 different layers. Okay, so every layer has its own intricacies. Every layer has its own specialty. You have to think of all of that. You have to have a plan for it. You have to define that plan, and then you have the fun that we're going to have going forward to actually do recovery and test all of that. We're not there yet, but it's a intimidating proposition to have that for the entire stack, for the entire system, because you cannot just safeguard one feature, right, or one layer. It has to be for the whole system. So that's going to be very, very interesting. And again, depending on what the SLA is with business, that has an impact into the time, effort, resources, and money you put into here to devise the solution. There's also something that it took me a couple of months to come up with, but it was gestating in my mind, and it had to do with how do we organize the work effort and how do we organize the technical management of it going forward. So I actually came up with something what I call a data warehousing technical management framework, and it's a philosophy that I have imbued on my team with some resistance, but basically the philosophy is when you're working on something, you immediately start documenting that item, immediately in parallel. When you tell me it is implemented, I want to see the documentation, and also what you're working on is guided by a document. So that has led itself to already a very substantial body of documentation, and it's flexible, it's open. You know, I add a new chapter, I add new documentation. There's grumbling every once in a while, but it's really working out very, very good, because I can say, okay, we have that item we need to work on. Start the document right now. You know, design while you go along. And then we have documentation and implementation at the same time. And it's just, it's just on a file system. It's just storage, nothing tool supported. But I hope to expose some of that on a website someday, on a data warehouse related website. So agile implementation was very interesting. We started out the technical implementation project with some agile components. From project management, we started out with Scrum meetings in the morning, and then that all fell down the wayside, and we didn't do it for a couple of months. We had also a change of project managers in between, which is something not to be recommending. But so we have picked it up again, and to me, it is really important that you identify that for yourself, what that truly means. We're not a development shop, we're a DBA shop, and now we're adding data warehousing into our service mix. So from an operational perspective, I have added daily Scrum meetings, but the more important aspect which we're working on and which we have not yet fully operationalized is to shorten your interaction time with your partners and your customers. I can have a daily meeting with my team all I want if that does not lead into a shortened time of implementation, into a shortened time of feedback to my partners and customers. So that's something we still work on. And there were some challenges also with the team. I mean, all of a sudden we ask somebody who is used to like giving a weekly update about something to give an update every day. So there are some nice challenges included in that. Just think that through a little bit. We also have a tool. We have a Kanban flow tool. It already has like 20 tasks on it or something, and I still haven't made up my mind yet whether a tool approach for that is really the best thing to do, because it becomes hard to hard to manage. But overall, it has been a positive influence so far, and it has changed dynamics and behaviors in the team and in the interaction with partners and customers, which I think is the important part. Lessons learned. So, always allow plenty of time for legal. We got burned really in not building in turnaround time for statement of work, definition and review, for purchasing review, for anything that needed to come back from counsel about legal signatures. It took way longer than it was supposed to, which pushed out things like purchasing and start of project. So, plan for it. Avoid changing implementation partners shortly before your implementation. You guys saw we had Cloudera selected at first, and we already had like half a year of experimenting and doing proof of concept and all of that. And then there were some budgeting and negotiating items that needed to take care of, and then we ended up with another partner, which works just as well, but it was a time of upheaval and uncertainty for the team to get over that hurdle. So avoid that if possible. One of our installation partners, SAS, they did most of their installation activities off-site. I would recommend against that. I prefer to have consultants working on-site. Working off-site has had some intricacies, some delays in technical work, some delay in communication, which is really giving us problems at the moment in the back end. So avoid that as well. Use an integration partner. We were the integration partner. We had 3-4 different technology solutions to implement here, different partners to work with. It would have been great to have an integration partner who would have helped us juggling those things and doing some best practices. We muddled through it. We had a lot of lessons learned. But if you can use an integration partner, use it. It's great. Proof of concept before you start the project as much as possible. I don't trust marketing and sales nearly as much as I used to. So basically, whatever is shown in a demo, try and check it out as much as possible on site or in the cloud as you can. Be as detailed as possible when you create your statement of work for vendors. That was very important. Have increased awareness of the phrase non-traditional implementation. I have heard that many, many times over the last half year. It's a fun phrase. I love it. It's a challenge. But it provides for some interesting nightly thinking and materials. Be proud and be supportive of your team. They're doing a tremendous effort. They're implementing new technology. It was not just another data warehouse. It's not just another database. And I'm trying to stick to that. That was the reason why I asked those 2 questions in the beginning. Define those terms that are important to you for yourself. Operationalize that. Take what you think will work, and don't listen to what is industry standard or what other people are doing, unless it's a good lesson learned, and implement that in your own way. All right, so our future. I'm a science fiction fan. This illustration here is from a German science fiction series which started in 1961 and has had a weekly issue ever since. It's called Perry Rhodan. I think it's one of the biggest, definitely in print, the biggest science fiction series with a consortium of science fiction writers behind it. But what I found here is this quote from Gene Roddenberry, and I am very, very thankful in my shop, in my circumstance, to be at the beginning of a journey and to do that after already having had a career and finding out some of those things and getting into very, very interesting applications going forward. So I'm sorry I talked too much. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Regarding the integration partner and the sort of the various tool sets that you were, at the time you were implementing that you had to do, the last years I've seen lots of platforms pop up that will handle ingestion and processing and compute storage in a sort of package. If you had to start the project, would you look at any of those platforms?
We might be looking at some of those platforms. But in the basic sense, I still believe in our architecture. There might be other tools that would make things easier, but you are also sometimes bound by strategic directives of your leadership team. And you make work and you make do with whatever you can, right? But one of the exciting attributes of that universe and that architecture is it shows higher velocity. Things are more innovative, driven out of the open source market. And functionalities that took 10 years to get into the mainstream of, for example, Microsoft or Oracle are there in a production release within a year. So yes, it is. We are beholden more and more to have our ear on the news and on the technical advances to make better decisions. Yes, I agree to that. Yes, sir.
What operating system you are using for your end-to-end architecture?
Yeah, we're using mostly Linux, Enterprise release 6.7. And for SaaS, we're using Windows. Oh, no, sorry. No, we're also using Linux for SaaS. So the only, I think only desktop systems are on Windows. Everything else is on Linux. Oh, no, sorry. SaaS is Windows. SaaS is Windows, which, again, because you have you have a different platform, then you have to think about different management constructs, different monitoring constructs. So we're looking at Elasticsearch, for example, for log ingestion and log mining. It has slightly different implementations for Linux versus Windows. So, okay. Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
So for SaaS analytics and your Windows, and your data lakes are in Linux. So have you encountered the big data integration issues somewhere there?
Yes. So yes, we have still technical issues that we are working on. One issue is for SaaS to initiate HTTP embedded processes. We're working on that. Some of those issues are also related to the current code level and version of Isilon, and they will be remedied with future versions of Isilon. So, yes?
How do you handle data security?
Yes. We have a security feature matrix. So physical access or server access is really only for the technical team. We're using some services from HTTP, Ranger and Atlas, The functionality is, we're currently on HTTP 2.4, and we're looking forward to the upgrades because some of the functionalities are not really there yet. Again, I need to say that in conjunction with Isilon, because a lot of the data management capacities which would usually be taken care of in the Hadoop layer are encapsulated in Isilon, we also need to wait for one of our Isilon upgrades to have a higher security function in there. No, yeah. And but it's our analytical layer takes care of most of that, but we're having a high level division of security. It's not it's going to go down to row level, but really, for example, in our case, only on the institutional basis, not colleges, not departments, not something nearly as difficult like the PeopleSoft model, for example. Yeah. There was a lot more I wanted to say and present, but I want to come back also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.